You've been sold a story. Isolated tribes, wandering continents alone, small bands huddled around fires with nothing beyond the horizon. Ancient people trapped by distance, by ocean, by mountain range. That's the version in most textbooks. But volcanic glass from Japan shows up in Texas. Tin from Cornwall ends up 3,500 kilometers away in Israeli shipwrecks. Afghan bluestone gets buried with Egyptian pharaohs. A single amber bead travels from the Baltic Sea to northeastern Spain before anyone builds a pyramid. The distances don't make sense. The timeline doesn't fit. What actually connected these people? Why do they need each other so desperately? And why does every new discovery blow apart what we thought we knew? Formed when lava hits water or air so fast it turns to glass instead of rock. No crystals, just edges that slice to the molecular level. 8,000 BC, maybe earlier. Neolithic farmers on Cyprus carved tools from obsidian that came from central Anatolia, over 240 kilometers across open water. The Sar-i-Sang mines in Badakhshan, northeastern Afghanistan, start producing obsidian by 7,000 BC. But here's where it gets strange. That same Afghan obsidian appears at Parana in the Indus Valley, dated to 7,500 BC. Then it shows up at Gilat in Israel's northern Negev desert, dated between 4,500 and 3,500 BC. Neutron activation analysis from a 1996 confirmed it. 7 obsidian artifacts from Gilat traced back to Nemrut Dag in eastern Anatolia, Golu Dag in central Anatolia, and Hotamas Dag also in central Anatolia. The distance from Anatolia to Israel, over 1,000 kilometers. But obsidian from Cyprus also appears in Neolithic village sites throughout the Fertile Crescent. Within 240 to 320 kilometers of a source, 80% of stone tools are obsidian. Outside that zone, the amount drops in a perfect exponential curve. Farther from source, fewer tools. But some sites break the pattern. Multiple sources. Gilat has 3. Palestine has obsidian from both Anatolian and Cycladic sources, suggesting trade with coastal farmers and semi-arid nomads simultaneously. The regularity proves continuous trade from 8,000 BC. Under a rock shelter, 200 obsidian flecks embedded in soil dated to 4,000 BC. No obsidian sources anywhere near Borneo. Robert Tykot, archaeologist and chemist at University of South Florida, runs chemical analysis. 11 compounds tested. Potassium oxide, silicon dioxide. The fingerprint matches obsidian from New Britain and the Admiralty Islands, 3,500 kilometers away. A smaller percentage came from sources near the Philippines. This is Stone Age maritime trade across the world's longest distance. The Lapita seafarers, who archaeologists thought pioneered Pacific trade around 1600 BC, they came 2,500 years late. Someone else was already sailing those routes by 6,000 years ago. It's the best way to support our work. Also, comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from the Journal of Field Archaeology, published October 1996, detailing obsidian evidence from Gilat, Israel by Joseph Yellen and colleagues, and Science Magazine's August 2021 report on Stone Age sea merchants documenting the Bukit Tengkorak findings by Stephen Chia and Robert Tykot. Now back to the information. Sardinian obsidian dominates early Neolithic assemblages across western Mediterranean coasts. Then it travels inland. 23 Sardinian artifacts identified at sites south of Rome, out of nearly 1,300 analyzed. The route wasn't direct across the Tyrrhenian Sea. It went Sardinia to Corsica, then through coastal France, following a down-the-line exchange system. A single Sardinian obsidian bladelet found at La Serreta in northeastern Spain, dated between 4,500 and 4,000 BC, 1,200 kilometers from source. This is maximum documented distance for Sardinian obsidian spread. The same period, Cyprus receives obsidian from multiple Anatolian sources, 8,200 to 6,900 BC. Early aceramic Neolithic. Portable XRF analysis confirms Cyprus had active maritime connections with mainland Anatolia across deep sea straits. They weren't isolated islanders, they were network participants, moving obsidian island-wide across distances ranging 30 to 220 kilometers. With tin, you get bronze that holds an edge and doesn't shatter. Problem? Tin is rare. 2 parts per million in Earth's crust. Copper has 70 parts per million. Lead has 16. Gold has 0.005. Tin sources in the ancient world. Cornwall and Devon in Britain, Brittany in France, German-Czech border region, Spain, Portugal, Italy, Central Asia from Yunnan to Malay Peninsula, Afghanistan, and scattered sources in Turkey and Africa. That's it. Everybody else has to trade. 3rd millennium BC, tin bronze appears across Southwest Asia, despite the region having almost no tin. Where does it come from? Nobody knew for centuries, until 2019. Ernst Pernicka and Daniel Berger at Heidelberg University and Kurt Engelhorn Center examined tin ingots from Turkey, Israel, and Greece, dated to 2nd millennium BC. Isotope analysis. The tin matches Cornwall and Devon, not Central Asia like everyone assumed. Baltic amber and Cornish tin traveling together. Fall-off analysis shows tin moved down the line through France before Minoan merchants shipped it across Mediterranean to Crete. Only Cornwall has matching cobalt and germanium concentrations. Herodotus wrote about tin from the Tin Isles. He meant Britain. 2025, study by Alan Williams and Benjamin Roberts at Durham University makes it definitive. 3 shipwrecks off Israel's coast dated around 1300 BC. Tin ingots sourced using advanced geochemical techniques. First concrete evidence that Cornwall and Devon were major Bronze Age tin suppliers. The tin traveled up to 4,000 kilometers, probably through stages via traders in France, Sardinia, Cyprus, tens of tons per year moving to match hundreds of tons of copper in Bronze Age circulation. The Uluburun shipwreck, dated 1300 BC, yielded enough copper and tin to produce 11 metric tons of bronze, enough to outfit almost 5,000 Bronze Age soldiers with swords. November 2022, Science Advances publishes findings. 1/3 of Uluburun tin came from Uzbekistan, over 3,200 kilometers away. Small highland pastoralist communities in Central Asia, not industrial centers, supplied tin to Mediterranean markets, a culturally diverse, multi-regional system operating outside control of kings or emperors. The tin isotope technique developed in mid-1990s, but precision came after 2010. Now we know. British tin was the first commodity exported across entire European continent, proving Britain's crucial role in making the European Bronze Age possible. X-ray fluorescence analysis of the gold and bronze. Some gold originated in Carnan Valley in Cornwall. Some tin in the bronze also came from Cornwall. The disk dates between 1800 and 1600 BC. Early Bronze Age, Onetis culture. That's at least 300 years earlier than previously thought for transcontinental Cornish metal trade. The implications stack up. Overland route from Cornwall through Germany confirmed. Intercontinental tin routes operating by 1800 BC confirmed. Bronze Age societies connected by necessity, not choice. Large donkey caravans transported tin from Central Asia through Syria and Mesopotamia into Anatolia. The tablets detail prices, routes, quantities. This is the documented mechanism. But even earlier, 3200 BC to 1800 BC, Kestel mine in southern Turkey operated. Miles of tunnels, some only large enough for children. A grave with child workers found on site. Crucibles and tools left when abandoned. Central Asian cassiterite deposits in Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan show exploitation starting 2000 BC. Chinese Bronze Age at Erlitou and Shang Dynasty, 2500 to 1800 BC, used cassiterite from Yellow River deposits until Yunnan mines opened around 700 BC. By Han Dynasty, Yunnan became China's main tin source according to historical texts. Every Bronze Age civilization competed for the same scarce resource. Rest of peninsula, Sicilian or Baltic. Sicilian cimatite reaches southern Iberian sites around 4000 BC, traveling through North Africa based on distribution patterns matching ivory. Then Bronze Age begins around 2000 BC and amber consumption drops. 1000 BC, Baltic amber floods in, replacing Sicilian entirely. The shift marks population movements across Mediterranean, not just trade route changes. August 2023, Scientific Reports publishes the earliest Baltic amber in Western Europe. A single bead from Cova del Frar, northeastern Spain, dated 3600 to 3300 BC. Fourier transform infrared spectroscopy confirms Baltic succinite. This predates bell beaker culture by over 500 years and traditional estimates by more than 1 millennium. The bead traveled through Sepulchros Defosa culture trade networks before their collapse. Then, by 16th century BC, Baltic amber becomes systematic. Tutankhamun's breast ornament, 1333 to 1324 BC, contains large Baltic amber beads. Heinrich Schliemann found Baltic amber at Mycenae. Spectroscopic analysis confirmed. Royal Hypogram of Khatna in Syria holds unparalleled quantities of Baltic amber for any 2nd millennium BC Levant site. The route ran from Baltic coast, modern Lithuania, and Poland through Biskupin, across Bohemia, modern Czech Republic, and Slovakia, down to Adriatic Head at Aquileia near Gulf of Venice. Roman fortifications protected the route because it was lucrative. Animal fur, skin, honey wax went north. Roman glass, brass, gold, tin, copper came south. In Scandinavia, the amber trade likely created the Nordic Bronze Age culture, bringing Mediterranean influences to northernmost Europe. Birana in Indus Valley has lapis artifacts dated 7500 BC. That's 9,500 years ago. Mehrgar Neolithic burials contain lapis beads. So do Caucasus burials. So does Mauritania across the Sahara. By 4th millennium BC, lapis reaches Mesopotamia during Ubaid period and Egypt by late 4th millennium. Around 3000 BC, lapis trade spans from Afghanistan to Tigris-Euphrates to Egypt. The routes: northern route went Koksha River to Jurm and Faizabad, then east-west Khorasan road to Balkh. Southern route crossed Hindu Kush to Baluchistan and Seistan, then ships down Persian Gulf to Mesopotamia. Some caravans went overland to Indus Valley first, then by sea. 2500 BC, Harappan civilization establishes Shortugai colony on Oxus River, Amu Darya, near Lapis mines. Shortugai wasn't just a trading post. It was full Harappan settlement. Square mud brick architecture, distinctive pottery, square seals with rhinoceros motifs and Indus script, terracotta cattle and cart figurines, carnelian and lapis beads, bronze objects, 25 kilometers of irrigation canals dug from Kaksha River for dry land farming with flax seeds. The settlement processed lapis on site. Raw lumps, flakes, production tools, all recovered. Finished beads shipped to Harappan heartland, then coastal routes to Mesopotamia, then Egypt. The blue stone held sacred significance. Egyptian rituals required it. Mesopotamian art demanded it. Harappan civilization facilitated the flow, but used almost none themselves. The exports exceeded imports dramatically. Harappan seals found in Mesopotamia. Mesopotamian seals not found in Harappa. Bitumen and wool imported. Consumables. Nothing affecting Harappan culture. This pattern reveals something uncomfortable. Ancient India established power through aesthetic denial of material wealth, not accumulation. The hermit had more power than any merchant. This script is researched and factual, using sources from Durham University's May 2025 publication in Antiquity Journal by R. Allen Williams proving British tin transformed Bronze Age Europe, and Scientific Reports August 31st, 2023 publication by Mercedes Murillo Barroso, documenting the earliest Baltic amber in Western Europe, from Cova del Frare, Spain. Now, back to the information. Pacific migrations break every rule. For decades, archaeologists debated Beringia land bridge around 13,000 years ago when ice melted, or earlier Pacific coastal route around 20,000 years ago. October 2025, Science Advances settles it. Lauren Davis, Oregon State University professor, leads analysis of stone tools from North American sites, dated 20,000 to 13,500 years ago, by faces. Projectile points flaked on both sides, creating razor-sharp edges. The technology appears first in Hokkaido, Japan, around 20,000 years ago. Then it spreads. Core and blade production combined with bifacial point manufacture forms the technological fingerprint linking American Upper Paleolithic to Northeast Asia. Sites in Oregon, Wisconsin, Florida follow the pattern but lack artifact density for full analysis. The evidence likely sits underwater along eastern Pacific Rim, submerged when sea levels rose at Ice Age end. Genetics supports it. Indigenous peoples in United States and Canada linked to East Asian and Northern Eurasian ancestry. The coastal route makes sense. Follow the kelp highway. Follow the food. Pacific coast from Japan to Mexico shared similar marine ecosystems. Walking the Gulf of Alaska shores was impossible with glacial ice reaching coastline. Only path south was by water. Settlement evidence. Monteverde in South America by 14,500 years ago. Genetic bottleneck in Beringia, 23,000 to 19,000 years ago. Rapid population expansion 18,000 to 15,000 years ago, then stops. This supports pre-Clovis occupation and rapid settlement following Pacific coastal route. The artifact required a multi-step process. Cut bark from resin-producing tree. Let it harden. Snap into shape. Possibly used as fuel for cave fires. Animal bones found. Marine fish bones. Sea urchin bones carried from coast 14 kilometers away. This proves maritime skills and complex plant processing. At that time, Waigeo was part of larger paleo island called Waitanta by researchers. Computer modeling and isotope studies show Waitanta contained rainforest patches and large valley system, separated from Sahul by deep sea strait, only a few kilometers wide. But crossing required boats, deliberate island hopping. The northern route into Pacific predates southern route by 10,000 years. Previous research suggested Sahul arrival maybe 65,000 years ago. Others insisted after 50,000. Malolo evidence splits the difference and confirms the northern route. Small rainforested Pacific islands were key stepping stones for human migration and adaptation. These weren't random drift voyages. These were skilled seafarers with purpose. Radiocarbon dates on vertebrate specimens and archaeological sites calibrated across western Cordilleran ice sheet. Expansion and decay during late Wisconsin Fraser glaciation. 4 subregions examined. Archaeological sites occur after glacial maxima, consistent with earliest securely dated sites in southern North America. Oceanographic conditions during last glacial maximum, 18,000 to 24,000 years ago, enhanced boat. Journeys. Freshwater influx driving opposing Alaska coastal current was small. Global sea level 120 meters lower. Necessary refugia existed. But Bowling Alarod, warming period, 15,000 to 14,000 years ago, accelerated Cordilleran ice sheet melting. Rapid freshwater influx hindered coastal travel as sea levels rose 14 to 18 meters in 340 years. The window was tight. 20,000 to 15,000 years ago. Before that, ice blocked passage. After that, currents and rising water made travel dangerous. The timing matches genetic and archaeological evidence perfectly. 1300 BC off Israel's coast, ships carry British tin and Uzbek tin mixed together, probably never knowing their cargo originated 4,000 kilometers apart on opposite ends of Eurasia. 50,000 years ago in West Papua, someone processes tree resin in a cave after sailing between islands across deep straits with no landmarks. 7,500 years ago in India, someone wears Afghan lapis that will eventually inspire Egyptian mortuary rituals 3,000 kilometers away. This wasn't gradual. This wasn't accidental. These were networks, maintained networks. Communities separated by oceans and mountain ranges, depending on each other for survival, for status, for the sacred materials that defined power. The textbook version says civilization invented trade. The evidence says trade invented civilization. We assumed ancient people stayed local because they lacked technology. Wrong. They had boats by 50,000 years ago. We assumed they lacked motivation to travel. Wrong. They needed tin so desperately they'd move it 4,000 kilometers across a continent in stages. We assumed they were culturally isolated. Wrong. Indus Valley, Mesopotamia, Egypt, Mediterranean, Central Asia, Northern Europe, all pulled on the same supply lines. We assumed trade required writing, currency, state organization. Wrong. Small pastoralist communities in Uzbekistan operated tin trade outside any king's control. We assumed prestige goods traveled, but ideas didn't. Wrong. The same maritime skills that moved Obsidian also moved boat-building knowledge, navigation techniques, and plant processing methods. We assumed distance was barrier. Wrong. Distance was opportunity. The farther your trade goods came from, the more valuable they were. Afghan lapis outcompeted local Egyptian bluestone because it proved connections. Cornish tin outcompeted closer sources because British deposits had higher purity and abundance. Baltic amber replaced Sicilian amber because demand exceeded supply and new routes opened after population movements. When tin stops moving, bronze production halts. When bronze tools become scarce, agriculture suffers. When harvests fail, cities empty. The Sea Peoples who supposedly destroyed Bronze Age civilizations around 1200 BC, they might have been refugees from trade network collapse, not the cause. Cut one tin root and the whole system wobbles. Cut two and civilizations fall. The interconnection wasn't luxury, it was structural necessity. Mesopotamian cities needed Afghan lapis for temples and Afghan tin for bronze. Egyptian mortuary rites required Baltic amber and Afghan lapis. Harappan merchants needed Mesopotamian wool and bitumen. Minoan Crete needed British tin and Cypriot copper. Break any link and the whole chain fails. Kilometers away cut better than local stone. Someone had to make that first crossing. Return. Report back. Convince others the journey was worth it. Then establish regular crossings. By 6000 BC, Sardinian obsidian reaches northern Italy. 1,000 kilometers. Not one voyage. Hundreds, maybe thousands. Each carrying small amounts down the line through intermediary groups. At 80% obsidian use within 320 kilometers of source, the supply zone required constant replenishment. Outside that zone, exponential drop-off proves the trade was continuous but diminishing with distance. Still, obsidian from Anatolia crosses 1,000 kilometers to Israel. Pacific obsidian crosses 3,500 kilometers to Borneo by 4,000 BC. These aren't one-time events. These are sustained networks spanning generations. Multiply by centuries of Bronze Age trade, thousands of shipments, tens of thousands of intermediate exchanges, millions of person-hours dedicated to mining, smelting, transporting, trading. And that's just tin. Add copper, lapis, amber, obsidian, gold, silver, ivory, wool grain, pottery. The economic activity rivaled anything before the Industrial Revolution. But it was invisible because it left almost no written record. We only know because the ship sank, the hoards got buried, the graves got sealed. They were sophisticated traders operating across cultures with standardized weights, sealed contracts, financial instruments. The Harappan civilization developed uniform weight systems. The smallest division, 1.6 millimeters, marked on ivory scales found at Lothal. That's Bronze Age precision measurement. Their brick sizes were uniform across hundreds of kilometers. Their dock and canal systems in Lothal suggest maritime trade infrastructure. Their seals prove property identification and trade goods stamping. This was organized commerce. The lack of decipherment doesn't mean lack of sophistication. It means our assumptions about what counts as civilization were too narrow. Medieval peasant in France, year 1000 AD, probably never traveled beyond 50 kilometers. Never saw the ocean, never handled goods from another continent, never met someone who spoke a different language. But Neolithic farmer on Cyprus, 6000 BC, used stone tools from Anatolia 240 kilometers away. Bronze Age, merchant in Crete, 1500 BC, sold tin from Britain 4,000 kilometers away, and lapis from Afghanistan, 6,000 kilometers away. Harappan craftsperson in Lothal, 2000 BC, processed materials from Central Asia, Mesopotamia, Afghanistan, possibly Egypt. The ancient world had more global connectivity than we credit. Not everywhere, not everyone. But the networks existed and functioned for millennia. That's longer than modern globalization has lasted, longer than any empire, longer than most languages. The errors multiply when you examine the collapses. 1936, archaeologists identify late Bronze Age collapse around 1200 BC. Cities burned, trade stopped, writing systems disappeared, population crashed. For decades, the narrative blamed invasions. Sea peoples, Dorian invasions, catastrophic warfare. But what if it was network failure? When Uluburin's ship sank around 1300 BC, it carried 1/3 of its tin from Uzbekistan. That supply chain crossed over 3,000 kilometers through multiple intermediaries. One disruption anywhere along that chain, drought, conflict, political change, and the tin stops. No tin means no new bronze. Old bronze gets recycled but degrades. Tool quality drops. Agricultural productivity falls. Food shortages create refugees. Refugees become raiders. Raiders become the sea peoples we blame. The invasion might have been symptom, not cause. Cut the supply lines and civilization starve. Not for food, for the materials that made civilization possible. This explains why recovery took centuries. Rebuilding supply chains requires trust, infrastructure, knowledge of routes, relationships across cultures. Once broken, tremendously difficult to restore. Modern archaeology keeps revising the dates earlier. Baltic amber in Spain, once thought 3000 BC, now confirmed 3600 BC. Cornish tin trade, once thought 1000 BC, now confirmed 1800 BC. Pacific obsidian, once thought 2000 BC, now confirmed 4000 BC. West Papua occupation, once thought 40,000 BC, now confirmed 55,000 BC. Every decade pushes human capability further back. Every new isotope analysis reveals longer trade routes. Every shipwreck discovery shows more complex cargo. The pattern is clear. We've been systematically underestimating prehistoric people's abilities, motivations, and connections. The textbook narrative of isolated bands slowly developing civilization is mythology. The evidence shows sophisticated networks operating before cities, before writing, before anything we traditionally call civilization. The networks came first, civilization followed. 2025. Discovery off Israeli coast. 3 Bronze Age shipwrecks with tin ingots geochemically sourced to Cornwall and Devon, proving 4,000-kilometer trade routes. Published in Antiquity Journal, May 7th, 2025, by Durham University team. 2023 discovery at Cova del Frare, Spain. Earliest Baltic amber in Western Europe. Fourier transform infrared spectroscopy confirmed Baltic succinite, radiocarbon, dated 3600 to 3300 BC. Published in Scientific Reports, August 31st, 2023. 2022 discovery from Uluburin shipwreck analysis. 1/3 of tin sourced to Uzbekistan using isotope fingerprinting. Published in Science Advances, November 30, 2022. 2021 study on Mediterranean obsidian, over 10,000 artifacts analyzed using portable XRF since 2010. Published in Applied Sciences, August 13/20/21. 1997 discovery at Bukit Tengkorak, Borneo. Obsidian from New Britain and Admiralty Islands, 3,500 kilometers away. Dated to 4000 BC. Published in Science Magazine, August 1st, 2021 retrospective. 1996 study of Gilat obsidian. 7 artifacts traced to 3 Anatolian sources using neutron activation analysis. Published in Journal of Field Archaeology, Volume 23, Number 3, October 1996. When Robert Tycott tests obsidian flecks from Borneo and finds chemical composition matching New Britain 3,500 kilometers away, that's not theory, that's fact. When Mercedes Murillo Barroso runs Fourier transform infrared spectroscopy on amber bead from Spanish cave, and results match Baltic succinite reference spectra, that's not assumption, that's data. The tools have gotten better. Portable XRF since 2010 analyzed more obsidian in 15 years than previous 50 years combined. Next generation sequencing revolutionized ancient DNA analysis after 2015. Isotope fingerprinting refined tin sourcing after 2010. Radiocarbon accelerator mass spectrometry pushed dating precision to single-decade resolution. Every technical advancement reveals more connections, longer distances, earlier dates. The direction is consistent, more connected, more sophisticated, more ancient. Baltic amber to Mediterranean. That's the Hanseatic League prototype. Pacific Obsidian Networks, that's Austronesian expansion prototype. The Bronze Age global trade network operating 3000 to 1000 BC was more extensive relative to available technology than anything until 19th century AD. They moved tons of material across thousands of kilometers using Bronze Age boats, pack animals, and human porters. No steam engines. No steel ships, no GPS, just knowledge, necessity, and networks maintained across generations. When it collapsed, it took civilizations down with it. When it functioned, it enabled the Bronze Age flowering that created writing, mathematics, astronomy, metallurgy, architecture, art, literature. Everything we call classical civilization required those supply chains. Remove the tin and you remove the Bronze Age. Remove the Obsidian and you remove the Neolithic Revolution. Remove the maritime networks and you remove human expansion across Pacific and Americas. The connections weren't consequences of civilization, they were preconditions. The most recent shipwreck analysis off Israel, dated around 1300 BC, proves Cornish tin reached eastern Mediterranean 4,000 kilometers away. The most recent amber study from Cova del Frare, dated 3600 to 3300 BC, proves Baltic amber reached western Mediterranean before Bell Beaker culture. The most recent tin isotope study, published November 2022, proves Uzbek tin reached Mediterranean 3,200 kilometers away outside state control. The most recent Obsidian database, compiled 2021, proves over 10,000 artifacts sourced from 400 plus sites established Mediterranean-wide trade. The evidence keeps stacking. The distances keep growing. The dates keep pushing back. Every assumption gets challenged. Every discovery demands revision. Within supply zones, 240 to 320 kilometers from Obsidian sources, Colin Renfrew's research established that 80% of chipped stone tools were Obsidian. This wasn't occasional trade. This was systematic supply, overwhelming local alternatives. Move outside that zone and the percentage drops exponentially with distance. Perfect mathematical curve. Continuous, predictable, maintained over centuries. Sardinia alone had 9 chemically distinct obsidian flows at Monte Arzi. Portable XRF analysis since 2010 identified which specific flow each artifact came from. Different time periods preferentially used different Sardinian sources. Early Neolithic favored certain flows, late Neolithic shifted to others. This wasn't just access, this was choice. Quality preferences changing over time. First wave, Sicilian cimatite reaching Iberia 4th millennium BC through North African intermediaries. Then, 2,000-year gap during early Bronze Age when amber nearly vanishes, except northeastern Iberia. Late Bronze Age, after 1000 BC, Baltic amber floods peninsula, replacing all other sources. Population movements in Mediterranean. Climate shifts affecting Baltic Sea. When networks break, they don't gradually decline. They collapse suddenly. Then new ones emerge following different logic. Eastern Serbia copper production ceased around 1600 BC, right when Trentino imports increased. This wasn't random. This was network reconfiguration. When one source failed, another stepped up. The system adapted. Bronze Age equivalent, tin mine in Cornwall floods. Takes months to years to restore. Meanwhile, every bronze workshop from Britain to Mesopotamia feels the shortage. Prices spike, recycling increases, quality drops, agricultural tools wear out, harvest efficiency falls, food shortages begin, migrations start, conflicts increase. That's why Uluburan's shipwreck matters. It carried mixed tin from Cornwall in Uzbekistan. Merchants diversified sources because single-source dependency was catastrophically risky. They understood supply chain resilience 3,000 years before we coined the term. Uniform weight systems enabled trade without constant recalibration. Dock facilities at Lothal with tidal basin enabled maritime commerce with Mesopotamia. Warehouse structures with loading platforms, granaries with ventilation, advanced drainage systems. This infrastructure didn't support local subsistence. This supported long-distance trade operations. Harappan seals with unique animal motifs acted as trademark identifiers. Mesopotamian merchants recognized Harappan seals on cargo containers. The cognitive leap, creating symbols representing ownership, origin, quality, and trust across cultures that don't share language. Foundation of commerce. Permanent colony with full Harappan architecture, pottery, script, weights, measures, industrial facilities. 25-kilometer irrigation canal from Koksha River. Flax farming. On-site Lapis processing. Vertical integration 3,000 years early. Control source, control processing, control distribution. Egyptian demand for lapis explains the investment. Tutankhamun's burial mask features lapis inlay, his sarcophagus, his jewelry. Every major temple had lapis decorations. Mortuary texts specified lapis for rituals, not local stone, Afghan lapis. When supply disrupted, Egyptian priests couldn't perform proper rites. That's leverage. That's why trade routes from Afghanistan through Indus Valley to Mesopotamia to Egypt operated continuously for over 2,000 years. Heinrich Schliemann excavated Mycenae 1871. Found Baltic amber in elite burials. Spectroscopic analysis confirmed Baltic origin. Mycenaean civilization flourished 1600 to 1100 BC. Same period tin trade peaked. These materials defined elite status. Mycenaean warrior buried with bronze weapons from distant tin, lapis amulets from Afghanistan, amber beads from Baltic, gold jewelry. Each item from different source thousands of kilometers away. The grave goods announced, this person controlled trade networks. Remove the trade goods and elite legitimacy collapses. Trade stopped for centuries. The Greek Dark Ages followed, 400 years with minimal evidence. When civilization rebuilt, it followed different patterns. Iron replaced bronze, new cities, new networks. The old Bronze Age networks never recovered. Too complex, required too many intermediaries. Once broken, couldn't reassemble. By 55,000 years ago, humans sailing between islands carrying processed plant materials. By 20,000 years ago, stone tool technology spreading from Hokkaido to Americas. By 4000 BC, Obsidian trading across 3,500 kilometers. Oregon State's Lauren Davis analyzed stone tools October 2025. American Upper Paleolithic bifaces matched Northeast Asian technology. Same core and blade production. Same bifacial points. Direct technological transmission. Ideas moving with people. The Pacific wasn't barrier. The Pacific was highway. Genetics, archaeology, stone tools, oceanographic conditions all align. Pacific coastal migration operative 20,000 to 15,000 years ago. Much earlier than Clovis culture. Paradigm shift. First Americans arrived earlier, used different technology, followed coastal routes. If they processed plants 55,000 years ago, what other technologies existed? If they traded obsidian 4,000 years ago across 3,500 kilometers, what other commodities moved? Underwater archaeology off continental shelves likely holds massive evidence. When Ice Age ended, sea levels rose over 120 meters. Every coastal site now underwater, every port, every dock, submerged. We're looking at maybe 10% of actual evidence. The 90% underwater could rewrite everything. The networks preceded cities by millennia. Networks created demand for administrative centers. Need to manage trade flows drove urbanization. Need to record transactions drove writing. Need to standardize values drove mathematics. Civilization emerged to service trade, not the other way around. Trade, evidence-based narrative, long-distance exchange, created demand for reliable supply. Reliable supply required permanent settlements. Permanent settlements needed agriculture. Successful agriculture created surplus. Surplus enabled specialization. Specialization enabled technology. Technology enabled cities. Cities required administration. Administration developed writing. Trade wasn't consequence. Trade was catalyst. If trade came first, then humans were globally connected before they were civilized. The evidence supports trade-first model. Cornish tin in Israeli shipwrecks 1300 BC. Baltic amber in Mycenaean graves 1600 BC. Pacific obsidian in Borneo 4000 BC. These were global networks, multi-continental, multicultural, multi-generational, operating without modern technology, operating without state support, operating because humans needed each other. That drive existed 50,000 years ago, exists today, will exist as long as humans remain curious, ambitious, and dependent on resources unevenly distributed across the planet. We got it fundamentally backward.